Hi, everyone. I am David Lipton from The Reckoning, July 4th, 2030. Welcome to our 19th in a series of weekly podcasts. In my last podcast, I promised to disclose the rising of a new political vision dedicated to the sustainability of our republic, the FCSLFD Coalition. What follows is the big reveal of where I stand. I suspect you have already figured that out by now. It is a pragmatic, uniquely American version of the American creed. Why is it so important that more citizens of our republic subscribe to this renewed vision of our nation? Well, I believe it is the only way to ensure the sustainability of our republic. I ask that we become fiscal conservatives, FC, remain social liberals, SL, and reinvigorate the forward defense policies, FD, that served us so well since 1945. FC, SL, FD is my recasting of the retreating American creed. In 2020, Robert Putnam published The Upswing. He argued that America came together a century ago, and we can do it again. I believe that is true. This podcast is dedicated to that proposition. Let's first focus on how we live as a nation and how we have performed over the last century. Have we lived as fiscal conservatives, spending within our means? Here are 4 sets of facts. You are likely acquainted with them. 1. A debt to GDP creation ratio of 3.30 to 1 over the past 50 years. That means $3.30 of debt created for every $1 of GDP. Second, total factor productivity annual growth rates declined from a high of 2.82% during the years 1920 to 1970 to 1.52% for the years 1970 to 2017, and finally to 0.7% during the years 1987 to 2022. 3. Declining growth rates of average real income from a high of 2.58% from 1948 to 1972 to a half of 1% between 1972 to 2013 and to near zero from 2013 to 2023. 4. U.S. personal income and debt ratios from 1970 to 2015 increased 139% and 256%, respectively. The ratio between the two increases is 1.84. That is $1 of 84 cents of value and of debt was created for every $1 of GDP over the period. Conclusion: on the personal and national levels, we are addicted to living on debt, while our collective ability to increase our rates of productivity has been in decline for years. These trends are neither sustainable nor fair to future generations of Americans. So in summary, are we practicing living within our means? No. Are we asking the federal and state governments to be frugal in their spending? No. Are we accepting the great fiction that governments allow us to pretend to live off everyone else when in fact we are living off ourselves and our future progeny? Yes. It is time for us to do something about these problems. Okay, folks, over to you. Think about what you would do for our republic rather than ask the republic to keep supporting our unsustainable lifestyle and incessant demands for increased government services and benefits. Turning to how we have arranged our lives since the end of World War II, let's examine if we as a nation move towards the social liberal ideal, that's SL, of acceptance of others and toleration of their different lifestyles. Let's start with the years 1945 to 1975. From the 1950s to the mid-1960s, solid economic growth prevailed. More cars, more homes, higher income levels, and political balance between the dominant parties seemed to be the order of the day. The American creed seemed intact, and acceptable to a large majority of Americans, at least on the surface. The civil rights movement was gaining traction during those years, and Martin Luther King had a dream. On August 28th, 1963, he made his famous speech at the Lincoln Memorial, and it was an American dream with the American creed at its core. The fly in the ointment was the Vietnam War from 1964 to 1973. Yes, we were all coming together until it all fell apart. The years 1975 to 2024. Throughout these years, the ground shifted. An increasing number of Americans turned to and became dependent upon the federal government to solve their personal financial problems. After the 1973-74 recession and the withdrawal from Vietnam, things began to unravel, and unravel quickly. We went from coming together to coming apart, from peaceful coexistence and civility to deepening distrust and incivility. Anxiety, once again, loomed large over our lives. Nevertheless, many of us practice the ideal of e pluribus unum, out of the many one. We do not think about it in those terms, we just did it. People from different religious backgrounds increasingly married outside of their faith. I know that. That's what I did. The rise of offspring from mixed racial marriages and mixed ethnic backgrounds also attests to our belief in doing our own thing. Conclusion: the idea of SL, social liberalism, is alive and well in our social relations. We should keep doing what we are doing and ignore what you often read in the press, because it's quite the opposite of what, in fact, we were doing. We were moving across our country and mixing with the people of our own choosing. Turning to the issue of forward defense, that's FD, of keeping our enemies far from our shores. Spiraling debt is undermining our ability to defend our republic. This current year is the first time in U.S. history that the United States will spend more on interest debt payments than on defense. That's $870 billion for interest payments and $822 billion for defense expenditures. That's a very disturbing trend. Withdrawing from the Eastern Hemisphere has always been a popular option with us since George Washington's farewell address in 1796. Why bother about the violence beyond our shores? Our foreign policy, especially after the 1950s, has often swung from short-term enthusiasm for fixing other people's and other countries' problems and intervening in their affairs to quickly withdrawing and leaving our allies high and dry. In the process, we dismayed our friends and impressed our enemies with our lack of staying power. Are we doing that today? The problem is that our spending more on interest payments that support our debt addiction than we are willing to spend on military and forward defense needs reveals our desire to turn inwards. It shows our enemies and friends abroad that we no longer are looking outward as a confident nation wishing to engage the outside world. Commercially, we're all in. Take our dollars in exchange for our goods and services, but otherwise don't bother us. Our friends and strategic dependents abroad are aghast, while our enemies are licking their chops. The financial hollowing out of our republic and retrenchment to our own affairs will not end well for any of us. Here is the report card for the republic for the past 50 years. Fiscal conservatism, FC, fail. Social liberalism, that's SL, reasonable pass. Forward defense, that's FD, about to fall off the cliff. This is why I advocate for the FCSL-FD approach to our nation's malaise. It is a sustainable vision for the continued prosperity of our economy and our republic. People often say that politics is the art of the possible. Well, let's do just that. Many of us are living and practicing SL quite apart from what is reported in the press. Let's cut back on our domestic overspending and become more energetic in our forward defense posture that we have so successfully practiced until the implosion of the Soviet Empire in 1991. The remedies are clear. What is lacking is the leadership to do it. I say to all patriotic Americans, yes, we can. We will overcome. God bless America. You will hear from me, David Lepton, in a week's time. You can access my ideas and thoughts by visiting Amazon.com and search for my ebook, The Reckoning, July 4th, 2030.